It is fantasy time once again, and we have the playoff usages reset. 5 usages for all drivers. Yeah, I can't even say I've been waiting for that, but I'm glad to get back on 11
You basically
playing
saved
field.
enough usages to use them still throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, so I'm glad to get some. I'm glad that I'm going to be able to reset here and really go out on 11 level playing field, because last week at Daytona, I whooped your butt. I should have whooped your butt.
Did you?
Plus 30 points by the end of the race. I wouldn't
necessarily call that a whooping, but okay.
I think at Daytona I could classify that as that, but of course,
whatever helps you sleep at night.
But I did lose last week in fantasy due to Chris Buescher.
Oh, that's strange.
Getting disqualified. Of course, the 2 guys that have been disqualified this season, I've had in my lineups, and those are the differences I've had in my lineups compared to Mr. Cushman. And I have lost both of those weeks after I thought I had won both of those weeks when the checker flag initially dropped. So it's been a tough go for me and bad luck this season. And that was just another one to round out the regular season.
But that's a decent rule to go by.
Don't do this. Really, I'm serious.
I would also call a whooping winning 12 straight weeks. That's what I would classify.
Okay.
Whooping,
we're not doing this. We're not. I can't.
Playoffs, baby.
I'll sign off. But yes, 5 usages for us, for all drivers here moving forward, and level playing field. Darlington represents the longest really race of the season in terms of time. And this is a track that really drags on. It's a race that has a lot of history to it, but at the same time, there's a lot of expectations that come along with this as the first race of the playoffs here. You want to try and win this first race, so you don't have to worry about the next 2 being short tracks, Richmond and Bristol. So lots of different guys that could go out there and win this weekend, given previous performances. But when you look at this season, there's a couple of names that really stand out that could go out there and grab the checkered flag and punch their ticket to that round of 12. So let's not waste any time here, Kyle. 5 usages apiece for all the drivers. Like I've said, you kick us off with the first pick for Darlington, the second race at Darlington this season.
Yes. And just before, this is, of course, the second time this year that we're going to Darlington, something a little bit different. Obviously not from last year, because we went there like 20 times last year, but from years that we normally had, one Darlington race was usually what we had, and either right at the end of the regular season or right at the beginning of the playoffs. And so this is a little bit different in this circumstance. You've got a different package in terms of the 750 package, which we had earlier this season, but you've also got a second Darlington date. So you've got data to pull from. So a lot of different variables versus some other years that we've had Darlington. Of course, being the second Darlington date, we did have a fantasy battle earlier there this season, which I did win 229 to 183. So feeling good going into this one. Leading things off for my lineup will, of course, be Martin Truex Jr. The guy dominated here earlier this season. It was in the middle of his stretch where he was just clicking off win after win at these 750 playoff tracks. And well, what are we at? 750 playoff tracks, especially in this first round. So Martin Truex Jr., absolutely one of the guys I'm looking to. A perfect 60 points earlier this season. I don't know if he'll be as dominant. It remains to be seen if they can find that form again, because they have kind of faltered a little bit over the rest of that regular season. But I have a lot of faith in kind of the greater, you looking at Joe Gibbs Racing and Penske guys to bring their game back up as we enter the playoffs here. We saw Hendrick kind of take over in the regular season. I expect to be much closer in these playoffs, and that begins with Martin Truex Jr. here at Darlington, dominant earlier this season. I don't see why he won't be right up at the front again this time around.
He kind of reminds me a little bit of last season's Alex Bowman, where he started the season out so strong, maybe not the wins category, but then faltered in the summer months where it just wasn't quite as strong as what you would have expected. And that led to us, using usages when we weren't essentially comfortable with Martin Truex Jr. throughout that summer stretch there, where the consistency wasn't there. The speed wasn't quite where we wanted it to be. So we wish we'd have utilized him a little earlier on in the season on the tracks that he was performing exceptionally well. And this is definitely one of them. Darlington, a perfect 60-point day. 248 laps led out of the 293. This is a must play for me this weekend. Martin Trix Jr. is also in my lineup. Over the past 6 races here at Darlington, 1 victory, 1 top 5. So that was just earlier this season, but a whopping 490 laps led. He starts 10th on Sunday, going into a Sunday night race as well with this one. Going to be a long one, but it's going to be a fun one because Martin Truex Jr. is going to put on a show. This is a long race. Track position is a little bit important, but when it comes down to 500 miles around Darlington, I think track position, you should be able to get up to the front if you have a fast enough car eventually. Saying that, though, it's going to be difficult to pass at times, especially with that new grip strip added in turn 2 with the repavement. Lots of drivers have expressed their concern or their uncertainty surrounding that area on how much of that will impact the racing. Will it become a passing zone, or will it become a one groove racetrack out of turn 2, more so than what it already was? It was difficult to pass off of turn 2, but now you're going to probably want to be in that new slick pavement that they had to repave that area of the track in order to keep that momentum. But then you're going to be entering turn 3 probably a little bit faster than you usually do as well. So lots of different variables here. This is kind of a semi-new Darlington coming into this one. In some cases, when you look at it, lots of unknowns, but looking forward to seeing how the drivers cope with that. And I'm sure they'll be tuning in to the Xfinity Series race and the Truck Series races before their Cup one. But Martin Truex Jr. is in my lineup. Second, there's a lot of different names you could go with this one, but for myself, I'm looking at Denny Hamlin here. Average finish over the last 6 races, 10.5, 1 victory, 3 top 5s, only 47 laps led. He does start second behind Ryan Blaney on Sunday evening. So there is lots of potential here for Denny Hamlin to go out there and get really good stage points in that first stage. He's one of the best here at Darlington. Hasn't quite been as fantastic as of late in terms of that race winning ability, but his 750 horsepower package speed this season has been phenomenal. Hasn't found that victory lane yet so far in 2021. Maybe this is the weekend he does find that out, and he is running the Xfinity Series race on Saturday as well to get him some extra practice laps. He's going to be the most prepared basically out of anybody in the playoffs, apart from Tyler Reddick, who's also running the Xfinity Series race, to know what that grip strip in turn 2 could potentially look like on Sunday. So Denny Hamlin, 100% in my lineup, given their speed on 750 tracks and Darlington being one of his better tracks on the Cup Series calendar.
Yep, Denny Hamlin, absolutely in my lineup as well. Has the fastest median lap time on the 750 package, which is what we're using this weekend. Finished 5th here earlier this season. And as you mentioned, has very, very consistent results at Darlington. And this is a very difficult track for a lot of drivers to find that consistency at. And so for Denny Hamlin, hasn't got necessarily the wins as much recently. Of course, won one of those Darlington races last year, but in a bit of different circumstances. 750 package. They've got a fast car on that package. Good track for Hamlin. He's running the Xfinity Series race, so he will have a bit of that extra lap time as well, even though it will be a very different track when you look at the daytime race for Xfinity versus the late afternoon into evening race for the Cup Series. Going to be some different tire management in that regard, but still quite like him this weekend. So Denny Hamlin, absolutely in my lineup as well. Number 3 for me, going back to one of the big dogs, and that is Kyle Larson. Finished second here earlier this season, was the only guy within the vicinity of Martin Truex Jr. come the end of that race. They have a solid 750 package, 5th in terms of median lap time with this 750 package. But for me, it's the fact that it's Darlington and Kyle Larson, and this is a driver's racetrack. And while Kyle Larson is one hell of a driver, over the last 6 races dating back to 2018, missed all 3 last season, so it's only the 3 race sample, but 48 points earlier this season in 2019, 49 points with Chip Ganassi Racing, and then 54 points in 2018. Kyle Larson is going to be one of the true contenders this weekend, so he is absolutely in my lineup to kick things off here in the playoffs.
He's in it for me too. It's a no-brainer. When you look at the tracks over the course of the playoffs, you could probably pencil in Kyle Larson in almost all of them if you wanted to, but Darlington really stands out as a must play. Over the last 3 races, an average finish of 2.33, 3 top 5s, 328 laps led. He starts 6th on Sunday evening. I just like everything that the 5 cars got going on. He was close to Martin Truex Jr. in the spring. It's going to be a toss-up between those 2 and maybe a couple of other guys that could potentially go up there. But Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Larson, even maybe Denny Hamlin, given his 750 speed, those are 3 guys that are absolutely standout plays here this weekend. So no-brainer to put Kyle Larson in this weekend at Darlington. For my 4th guy, this is where it gets, you can go a lot of different ways, I think, from here on out. There's a lot of different names that you could put into a bag, and hopefully some of them stick and get you some points. And one guy that when I look at their 750 speed this season that really stands out it's Kevin Harvick. Over the past 6 races, he's got an average finish of 3.17, 2 victories, the defending race winner here in this race specifically last season as well. But of course, he was running third there late before the Truex and Elliott incident going into turn 1. So was kind of fluked into that one essentially, but was still in the right place at the right time. He starts 9th. He's got 211 laps led over the past 6 races here as well. And most importantly, he finished 6th here in the spring, so had good speed. 750 results have been very consistent for them. I like a good points day for Kevin Harvick. Hopefully he can get that done to kick off his playoffs, and he's going to need it because he is coming in as that 16th seed, so needs as many points, playoff points, stage points, whatever you want to categorize it at. He needs as many of those as possible before he hopes to make the round of 12. So Kevin Harvick is in my lineup as my number 4 guy.
Yep, Harvick absolutely in my lineup as well. In fact, I'm expecting him to be a top 5 guy this weekend. The Stewart-Haas speed has been on the 750 track so far this season, ranked 6th in 750 median lap time. It finished 6th here earlier this season. So right on the nose in terms of the package there. Looked very good at New Hampshire, which is kind of what you would pull from in terms of a 750 package going into these playoffs. The last time that the Cup Series guys have to test out that package in the regular season going into this one. Fully expect Stewart-Haas to be a contending team at these kind of next 3 tracks with the 750 package. And that begins with Kevin Harvick. He needs to get those points as the number 16 seed going into these playoffs without those stage wins, without the positional gain of being one of those really solid guys well inside the top 10 in points. Doesn't get anything like that, like Denny Hamlin does, being so high up in points. So for Harvick, points are going to be the name of the game. Need to go out there, get those stage points, need to go out there, get that finish. And I fully expect Kevin Harvick to be in that conversation. Of course, last year was with a different package, but you look over these last 6 races and kind of the recent sample, all of those very strong top 10 performances. And so when I look at how good the Stewart-Haas speed has been on 750 tracks, especially as the season's progressed, really like Kevin Harvick's prospects this weekend. So I've got him in my lineup here as well. To my number 5 guy, it's a guy that I kind of took a swing on earlier this season, even though the speed numbers didn't really suggest it, and it worked out well for myself. I'm going to make that same bet again, and that's Kyle Busch for this one. The results have been very inconsistent on the 750 track so far this season, just the 3 top 10s at Darlington, Richmond, and Martinsville. But Darlington was the best points day of all of those. Drivers racetrack, long race. They still have good 750 speed. It's not amazing by any means. It ranks 8th in terms of median lap time, but I like Kyle Busch prospects here at Darlington. I like him starting off these playoffs. And so worked well for me earlier this season. He got a 3rd place finish. So I'll take the swing on Kyle Busch here again as my number 5 entry.
Oh, man, you're going hardball. Oh, my God. I'll think about Kyle Busch over my next pick. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, you've got back-to-back here to round out your lineup, so you better make that decision quickly here.
I know. But one guy I'm for sure having in my lineup this weekend is Chase Elliott. Over the last 6 races here, average finish is not fantastic. 15.58, 2 top 5s, 151 laps led. He starts 4th. He finished 7th here in the spring, but he was in contention here last season for that victory in the closing stages of the race. This is a track where he broke through in his Xfinity Series career as well. So I think all signs point to it when I look at the tracks coming up as well over the playoffs. This is a track that really stands out to me as one where I can play Chase Elliott. There's a couple of ones where I'm not 100% sure. And Charlotte Roval, 100%. We're all going to play him there. That's one that we have penciled in. 550 speed, I think there's maybe some better options at some of them. So when I look at a 750 track, I think that this is probably one of his better ones if he's going to get a result here this weekend. It may not be the best points day. I think high 30s, maybe even low 40s is within range for Chase Elliott if things go his way. Starting 4th, could get some good track position, get some good stage points as well. So I have to go with Chase Elliott. I feel like here for this one for my 5th entry. 6th. There's some good names here. You could go absolutely all-star lineup here I could put Kyle Busch in here, but there's a couple of other guys that I look at as well as potential options. And man, there's some good names. I really got to be honest. We'll get into honorable mentions in a second, but damn, this is tough. This is extremely tough.
There's a lot of really interesting value plays.
Yeah. Damn. I thought you would have maybe came up with something where we'd be a bit different, but no, you haven't. So
how do you know I'm not saving that for my sixth pick here?
I know. I mean, if I go Kyle Busch here, that means you can't take Chase Elliott. So,
but then you're also using a Kyle Busch usage early.
Yeah, I am indeed.
There's a couple of very interesting Kyle Busch races the rest of this round as well.
Don't get me started on that. Okay, I'm gonna go with I'll go with Joey Logano.
Ooh, okay.
His 750 speed this season has been very encouraging. And when I look at that specifically, may not have the best spring result here. That may be a bit of a concern, but his 750 horsepower package speed has been phenomenal. They've really put an emphasis on that. There's a whole bunch of different guys that could go with this one. But when I look at the tracks coming up and when I look at the playoffs, Joey Logano only has a couple of tracks. Well, actually, I didn't have him penciled in for Darlington when I did my notes. What am I doing? Maybe I'll switch it.
Come on, you locked it in.
No, I didn't lock it in.
That's a bit of a questionable. Are you really?
Yeah, I'm switching it. I'm switching it. I'm switching it. I don't
know how I feel about that, but okay.
I don't care. I'm going to go with William Byron as my last pick.
Okay.
Finished in the top 5 here in the spring. And when I look at the tracks, I feel like I can use Joey Logano elsewhere on the 750 tracks rather than Darlington, given the spring results. I'll go with William Byron here as my last entry. I want to save Kyle Busch for a couple of other races. I think this is a track where I could use a William Byron one instead. And I'm going to have to garage one of these guys. So hopefully maybe a William Byron usage doesn't come back to haunt me here and I could use him a little bit later on. But if he does get up into that top 5 conversation in my lineup, then I feel comfortable enough where I can use William Byron here as my last usage.
Questionable move aside, that's a whole nother thing. I am glad you didn't take Kyle Busch because that leaves me the opportunity to take Chase Elliott, and that's exactly what I'm doing for this last pick here. Of course, the Chase Elliott, Martin Truex Jr. combination should have won me the opening race of the playoffs last year until they both decided to wreck going into those last handful of laps and finish at the latter part of the teens. So that was really fun. I really enjoyed that one.
I don't feel bad for you.
I'm going back to it. Because I really like the prospects there. I like Chase Elliott at Darlington with the 750 package, finished 7th there earlier this season. I would expect them to be a little bit more competitive this time out. The overall numbers are dragged down a little bit because of that finish in the 3rd Darlington race last season. And of course the second one as well, where he got wrecked out. But I think overall the numbers for Chase Elliott are promising when he's been able to finish the races. He had 2 of the 3 races end in wrecks essentially last year.
Yeah.
If he keeps the car clean, finishes the race well, I expect him to be a very strong fantasy play. So he is my number 6 entry in the lineup, basically guaranteeing me 5 really strong guys that I can pick from and then save another usage for future playoff usage from there.
Yeah. 5 of the 6, the same for us here, or no. Yes. Yep. Yes. 5 of the 6. It's William Byron versus Kyle Busch. So that's what it comes down to for the driver lineups, but the bonus picks is probably where this week could ultimately be decided at the end of it. As per usual. Yes. But honorable mentions, Kyle Busch, you have him in your lineup for obvious reasons. He's got great numbers here. I just like some other tracks a little bit more. If his 550 speed wasn't as good as it was, then I would definitely look at this place as a racetrack I'd want to pencil him in. But I think all 3 mile-and-a-half tracks, 550 ones, that is, yep. I feel really solid about Kyle Busch. And then the next 2, specifically Richmond and Bristol, you look at. But for myself, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen our playoff predictions one, I have Kyle Busch winning the championship. So if he does make it to Phoenix, I do have that usage and maybe get a 40-point day out of him there. Lots of different options for me for that number 18 car. For Tyler Reddick, I have him in here as an honorable mention as well. If you didn't go so heavy hitter, I was looking at him as a value play, but I just can't quite have him competing against some of these big guys. But Tyler Reddick, if you want to save some of these bigger guys just for a little bit more of a mile-and-a-half track, if you feel more comfortable with them a little bit later on, then go for it. Tyler Reddick, I think, would be an excellent addition to your lineup in terms of consistency. This is a track where he earned some good stage points earlier on this season as well. Didn't quite get the finish you'd want, finishing 12th, but he's still in that conversation here at Darlington. So he could be an underrated play here to get some back half of the top 10 stage points and maybe get a top 10 result when it's all said and done on Sunday night. Joey Logano, he does make an honorable mention here. I was obviously close to putting him in my lineup, but 750 horsepower package speed has been their bread and butter this season. And this is a track that's been pretty decent for Logano in his career as well. Doesn't quite have the race victory, but consistency wise, he's very much in the conversation. It seems more often than not. Finished third here in this fall race last year. So look to him to have a pretty solid day. I just like William Byron, maybe just that tad bit more when I looked at my numbers a little bit more
I
closely.
hope Logano gets a 60-point day.
Okay. If I lose that way, it is what it is. It's my own doing, but I'm happy with my decision.
Psycho move.
Kirkbush is another one here that I'm going to put into honorable mentions just because of his recent success here at this track. It's not that bad of numbers for the one car. And if he needs to start off his playoffs right, he's got an average finish over the last 6 races of 12.33. Had an incident in the spring as well that really didn't give you a clear representation of maybe what that one car is capable of. Saying that though, his 750 results this season have been pretty poor. So he's more of a fringe guy.
One top 10 on the 750 tracks.
But you never know. If the track position works out for the one car, he could maybe squeak his way in there for a decent points day. I don't either, but I didn't feel like he was bad enough.
Why is he an honorable mention if you don't love it?
No, but I just think if you don't want to use some of these big guys that we went for, I think he's a name that you could potentially consider for this. And I didn't feel confident enough for me to say he's a stay away from this weekend. You could go out there and maybe get.
Well, it doesn't need to be either or. There is a middle ground.
I don't think so. Not for the playoff guys, really. I think that there's no real middle ground. Either you like them or you don't really.
We're going 16 deep.
No, I didn't name all the playoff drivers, but for Christopher Bell, I think he does make it into this category here as well. This is a track where Adam Stevens has brought a good setup for the 20 car in the past. The 20 car specifically with Eric Jones behind the wheel has been fantastic as an entry here. One of the best average finishes amongst anybody in the field currently. But Christopher Bell's 750 tracks have been more of their forte in 2021. So I like them as a potential value pick here. Maybe this weekend. He's a guy you may not get up to 5 usages over the course of these 10 races. So if you want to spend one early, you could do so maybe here at Darlington. And the last one here for honorable mention, I just wanted to toss him in here. You won't use him in your lineup probably this weekend, but it's Eric Jones. I just wanted to give him a special shout out because he has some really, really good numbers. Finished 18th here in the spring, so that's not a bad result either for Richard Petty Motorsports Equipment. Was, I think, running up a little bit towards the top 10 at one point in time, fell back a little bit later on into the race. But Eric Jones, I think, deserves just to be an honorable mention here for Darlington and one of his best, if not his best, Cup Series track by far. So wanted to toss him in there. But for the stay away froms, there's 3 guys I have here. Ryan Blaney, self-explanatory. This is not one of his best tracks, despite him finishing inside the top 10 in the spring. There's way better options out there than him this weekend, despite him starting on pole. So he could get some stage points, not saying that he couldn't, but there's some guys behind him that are going to be hungry hounds.
It's not worth the risk. There's better places to use him.
He's got a lot of good other tracks coming up over the course of 10 races where you'd really want to use him rather than Darlington. Alex Bowman. I think that there's just some better options elsewhere here at Darlington. Doesn't have a great average finish here over the past 6 races either. Is around the Chase Elliott number, but Chase Elliott has had more incidents than Alex Bowman to really set back his average finish more so than that 48 car. Could potentially go out there and get a top 10. Not saying that he can't, but there's some other guys out there that specifically in our lineups that are better options, at least in my opinion here for Bowman. And then last but not least, it's a guy that has really good numbers here at Darlington, but is going in the wrong direction in terms of momentum. It's Brad Keselowski. I think that this could be a surprise weekend. 750 tracks have been a little bit better for them, but they've been hit or miss depending on the track type. A more of a flat track like a Richmond or a New Hampshire, or maybe even a Phoenix is more liking to the 2 car than a track like Darlington. Completely missed the setup here in the spring. I had him in my lineup. He was just a complete no-show, multiple laps down, had a couple of issues as well, but there was nowhere near the speed that I thought the 2 car would bring to a track like Darlington, where he's a former race winner as well. So for all those reasons, I've got those 3 as to stay away from. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts on what I've got?
Bowman's a fascinating one to me because he's very much a boomer bust kind of guy. Like we saw him last year lead quite a few laps at one point at Darlington, finish second. But other than that, it's been a lot of kind of down. He did have a 6th place finish also last season at Darlington. But in general, previous to 2020, no real good results whatsoever to speak from. Earlier this season wasn't all that good. The 750 speed isn't amazing either, just 11th overall. So he's a guy that I'm interested to see where he kind of goes, because of course, with the playoff kind of resurgence that he had last year, it started with that solid run, finishing 6th at Darlington last year. So if he can kind of rekindle that a little bit, I'd look to him as potentially an option. He was in consideration for myself if I wanted to save a usage from somebody else. But I'd rather go heavy early on and need to save stuff or use value guys later on than use value guys early on and then not end up using heavy hitters, essentially. The other guy I really like as a potential other guy that I wouldn't necessarily have as using all 5 usages is Christopher Bell there. Top 10 in terms of 750 median lap time. That's been their strength all season long. I'm expecting JGR to be very strong this weekend. Had a very strong run, of course, at New Hampshire, finishing 2nd there. Not a great run at Darlington earlier this season, finished outside the top 10. But if they're going to make it through this first round, they need to get some good results earlier on. I expect JGR to be strong out of the gate here in the playoffs. And so I will group Christopher Bell into that group as well. So those are 2 that I definitely look to as some value guys with some potential there. Tyler Reddick in that conversation as well, a little bit slower on the 750 speed, but can wheel a race car, to say the least. And so he's in that conversation as well. But I'm fascinated to see where he ends up playing out, because we saw Austin Dillon, of course, last year being the lone RCR guy in the playoffs, look very good, except that was with the 550 package. So I'm interested to see where a couple of those guys end up finishing in this race in terms of fantasy usages as well.
Should be a fascinating weekend for guys that could surprise us, or some of the favorites really go all in and get a massive point staying.
Just to that point, finally, talking about last year's Darlington playoff race with the 16 playoff guys made up 12 of the top 13 positions. And that would have been 13 or like 14 of the top 15, of course, had Chase Elliott and Martin Truex Jr. not crashed out. The only guy that spoiled that party was, of course, the Darlington ace, Eric Jones, there in the 20 car, finishing 4th. But outside of that, Harvick, Dillon, Logano, Jones there in 4th, and then Byron, Bowman, the Busch brothers, Almarola, Boyer, Keselowski, Custer, Hamlin, all playoff guys. And so that's going to be the story once again. It's going to be the playoff guys making up a huge contingent of that top 10, if not all of it, and then further down into the top 15, making up a lot of that. So that's what I'm looking to. One final guy that I do want to mention in terms of an honorable mention or something along those lines is Eric Almarola. Really like the SHR speed on the 750 tracks. Could be a really strong value usage here early in the playoffs with these 750 package races. Finished in the top 10 last year at this race in the playoffs. They need to get those playoff results early on. Have had really strong 750 results this season when they haven't crashed. Of course, they did crash at Darlington, so there is that to keep in your mind. But I'm expecting a really solid day from SHR as a whole. That includes Chase Briscoe as well, who finished 11th here earlier this season.
Yeah, this could be a one weekend. If you're going to look for SHR to have a positive result, this is definitely
I'd actually stretch that out to this entire first round. Really like their prospects on the 750 package.
Okay. Bonus picks time. This is going to get extremely dicey, but you lead us off with the Top Chevrolet. Who do you think is going to be leading that pack here at Darlington?
Yeah, Top Chevy's fascinating because you've got 3 really strong guys, and Kyle Larson, who's been so great at Darlington, but then Chase Elliott, who probably should have won this race last season, has had a couple really strong runs at Darlington recently when he hasn't gotten to those crashes. And then William Byron, who had a really, really good run earlier this season and is, of the Hendrick cars, the fastest in terms of median lap time on the 750 package. All of that being said, I am going to go with Kyle Larson as my top Chevrolet. Just too much potential there at Darlington Drivers Racetrack. All of it seems to be shaping up to be a very strong Kyle Larson weekend. So I've got him as my top Chevrolet.
I do as well. I would like to go with somebody else just to see what I could do, but I feel the most confident in Kyle Larson this weekend in terms of getting that result. They've just been too consistent so far this season. And despite their median lap speed being a little bit behind the likes of a William Byron in terms of the season long, I still think a driver's racetrack will kind of make that null and void to an extent. I think the driver ability for Kyle Larson and just the ability for Cliff Daniels to set up a race car, not Cliff Daniels, right? Yeah, I'm getting that right. Yep. There's so many different things that I'm going through my mind right now, but for Kyle Larson, I just like him as the favorite to lead that pack here this week. And it's going to be such an intense battle between Hendrick and Gibbs and maybe a Joey Logano or Kevin Harvick up there this weekend. It's really too close to call, but if I had to give the edge, I'm going to go with Larson for Chevy. For Ford, I think this one's simplest enough for me here. I'm going to go with Kevin Harvick just based off of previous success here at Darlington. Every time I go with Joey Logano, he disappoints me. So I'm going to go safer than sorry and say that Kevin Harvick backs up his Darlington performance in the spring and still has a solid result here once again here in the playoff opener at Darlington.
Yep, I've got Harvick as top Ford as well. Just simply put, I don't really see enough value from any of the Penske guys to really go out and use any of them for that distinction. Joey Logano has the speed, but didn't look great here earlier at Darlington. Has kind of been up and down in his Darlington career. Brad Keselowski hasn't had the 750 speed this season, and Ryan Blaney just hasn't had those results yet in his career at Darlington to make him a decent pick. So honestly, I'd be looking at the SHR guys kind of, and Kevin Harvick is the clear favorite for that one. Finished sixth here earlier this season, has that really strong 750 speed, and so I'm expecting him to be up in that top 5 conversation all day long. He is easily my pick for top Toyota. Can't go other than Martin Truex Jr. He was too dominant here earlier this season. Has been a great racetrack for him. Again, could have won this playoff race last season if it wasn't for that incident with Chase Elliott coming to those final laps of the race. And so for Martin Truex Jr., too fast of a race car for me to bet against from earlier this season. I'm expecting them to return to form here in the beginning of the playoffs. Truex is my top Toyota.
Yeah, I have him too. I mean, I hate to match you so much here, but I really did have Truex written down. I think
these are pretty straightforward for the bonus picks, at least until we get to manufacturer organization. That's where it gets really interesting. But for these ones, I think it's fairly straightforward.
Yeah, I do like the 19 car quite a bit this weekend. I think there's definitely if you want to go with a Hamlin or a Kyle Busch this weekend, I don't think that's entirely wrong either. But in terms of race winning capability, I give the edge to the 19 car, given what we've seen earlier this season on this track, on this package. It tracks more applicable to this. There's more speed to that 19 car than I think what meets the eye sometimes. And this is going to be a track where we really find out what the 19 car is made of. If he doesn't really show up here this weekend, that would be pretty concerning for me. If you're a Martin Truex Jr. fan, or if you have him going long in the playoffs, if he doesn't show up at Darlington, there may be a little bit more to this summer lull that they had this season. But Martin Truex Jr. is top Toyota. Now this is really where it gets interesting.
And I am glad you're going first for this one.
Yeah. I don't like going first for this one, but I'm glad you're going to go first for the next one to see what you do for that one. Cause this one, I'm leaning towards a split. I will say that, like, if I'm going to go somewhere, I don't quite feel confident enough to go in on one.
For what it's worth, I split earlier this year at Darlington as well.
Yeah, I don't feel confident enough to go with a manufacturer and a organization that is from the same kind of make and model. If I'm going to lean somewhere though, in terms of winning manufacturer, I think I'm going to go with Chevrolet, and just based off of their ability to close out races, they have more options than Toyota. Let's say Denny Hamlin doesn't quite have the speed this weekend, despite him being the fastest car on the 750 package, or a Kyle Busch doesn't quite have it this weekend. I think the likes of a Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, and a William Byron will have enough to be a little bit more of an option towards that side of things than a Martin Truex Jr. kind of on his own, if that does end up being the case. But I think those 6 guys right there, it's really fine. It's slim pickings. It's really, really close, but I'm going to give the edge to a Chevrolet team that didn't win the race in the spring, but finished second behind Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Larson. So I'll say that they get the winning manufacturer.
This is a tough one. I am going to go against you on this one. Split it. I'm going to go with Toyota as the top manufacturer for this one. And I'm just playing the numbers game on this one. Toyota's on the 750 package ranked 1st, 4th, 8th, and 9th in order: Hamlin, Truex, Busch, and then Bell, versus the Hendrick cars with the Chevys, ranking 3rd with Byron, 5th with Larson, 7th with Elliott, and then 11th with Bowman. So just that slight edge in the speed for the Toyotas Really like what Truex showed earlier this season, like Hamlin's speed at this racetrack. In addition to his talent there, Larson could easily spoil the show for myself and hand you the victory there. But I am going to go with Toyota for the manufacturer and double down on it with Joe Gibbs as the organization.
Wow. For me, I am going to go with Joe Gibbs Racing, though, for the winning organization. I think the race winning ability of Martin Truex Jr. is just the edge for me, but I think the overall consistency from the three other guys outweighs the other three from Joe Gibbs Racing. But the winning factor, I think, comes from the 19 car here this weekend. It just gives that slight edge for me here at Darlington. It's close. It's extremely close. This is probably one of the most uncertain weeks I've ever had to pick. I'm sure for you as well, between these two manufacturers and organizations.
First time I've really had to think about it in a while.
Right? You lean Chevrolet, you lean Hendrick just based off of their overall performance and having four guys across the board that could go and win. This weekend, it's pretty close. You look at Bowman and Bell, you're splitting hairs a little bit between the two. I'd probably give the advantage to Christopher Bell if I'm going to go out there on a limb, give on their speed. But then you look at Kyle Busch and William Byron. Of course, the two differences in our lineup, I'd say that they're pretty close in terms of what they could potentially do here this weekend. Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin, really damn close. And then Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Larson, probably as close as you can get. So it's really close between two fantastic organizations here this weekend. And who knows, Team Penske could go out there and win the race with Joey Logano. Stewart Haas Racing could go out there and win the race with Kevin Harvick. And we could be looking stupid, but this is just playing the numbers game here when it comes to that. But yes, I'm going to go with Joe Gibbs Racing here as the winning organization. But Truck Series time. We're going to get to the winner picks here for this upcoming weekend. The Truck Series race on Sunday, kind of morning-ish in the afternoon before the Cup Series race. And for me, you're
not West Coast anymore. It's early afternoon, baby. 1:30 start time.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not used to that. But for me, this is a pretty self-explanatory one. It's hard to look at that early race because of how much carnage there was in the final 80 laps. But the guy that was leading before that carnage and got taken out on the restart by his teammate was John Hunter Nemechek. I say that he goes out there and gets a little bit of redemption here and gets his championship path right back on track after a sluggish gateway, having multiple issues throughout that race. I think he gets it going and wins and punches his ticket to the next round here at Darlington.
That's the guy I wanted. So there you go. Led 65 laps. He's a great pick there. Because don't forget, Darlington is where he kind of had his first breakout Cup Series run with Front Row Motorsports in the 38 there as well. So if there's a place that he's going to be very strong at, you have to assume it would be this place, because with that damaged truck as well, he still ended up finishing 8th place. Although when you look at the trucks behind him, not exactly a ton of competition there. For myself, I'll go with a bit of a swing. And funny enough, it's the same guy I went with last time, and it's Todd Gilland. Like the speed in that Front Row Motorsports truck, led 17 laps last time out at Darlington, at Darlington. Some similar characteristics to Gateway, which he had a very strong run at last season. Didn't quite show that same speed at Gateway, but there was a lot of chaos at the end of that race, of course, as well. Starting to see a theme with the Truck Series in terms of chaos. But with Sheldon Creed having wrapped it up, I don't know where he's going to be in the conversation for this one. I think those guys are going to be in the conversation for the top 5. Ben Rhodes up there as well, having led 34 laps in that last race at Darlington as well. But I'll take the swing on Todd Gilland to get things righted here in the playoffs.
I like it. If I'm going to give a shout out to somebody who could go out there and potentially win this race that I wouldn't have picked, but or I had the option to not pick him, so I wasn't going to. But if I did, I would pick Carson Hocevar. I think he could potentially be a really good candidate here to get his first Truck Series victory. Ran well here in the spring, finished third in this race. So could potentially be a sneaky play
and
there.
He's been talking about this race as being a big opportunity for that team as well. So definitely going to keep an eye on him this weekend. I'm excited to see what he can do this weekend for that one. For Xfinity, there's really not much to say. Denny Hamlin's running this race in the Xfinity Series, so he's easily the pick for myself. There's really not much to say about it.
It's the clear-cut favorite. I mean, it's pointless for me to even pick a driver, but
Daniel Hemrick, then you won't.
I'm not going to.
Why not? Why not?
Because I don't think he's actually going to win this weekend. Because I think Hamlin's going to win this weekend.
Yeah, so then pick him. I just want to see you pick Daniel Hemrick once.
I don't know if I'll ever do that.
That would make my day.
If I'm I'll just go with the guy who won the spring race. I'll go with Justin Allgaier.
Boring.
Yeah, I know.
I say as I picked Denny Hamlin.
Yeah. So at least it's a little different, but yeah, I'm just going to go with the numbers here and just go with the guy that has been able to prove himself and win here. Brandon Jones, if he doesn't have as bad luck as he has this season, I would potentially look at him as an option because he won here last year in this crazy race between Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin, where they both lost and wrecked each other. But there's still Ross Chastain in the field this time to really upset Denny Hamlin. I think this should be a clear-cut path to victory for him. But if it doesn't, I'll say Justin Allgaier is the guy to upset him here at Darlington. Cup Series winner.
How long are you going to try and stall for this one?
This is an extremely difficult one to pick. I hate going first for this one, to be honest. It really does pain me because I don't like leaving you some of these guys that I would easily.
You can't take multiple winners.
I know. I would love to just take like a bunch of 5 and then just hoard them, but I can't do that, obviously.
I'd still beat you.
Probably. So the way you've kind of gone about it strategically, it makes me think that you're not going to go all in Joe Gibbs Racing. It makes me think that you're going to go with the Hendrick guy because you've gone heavy with those two, but then to cover your bases, you're probably going to go with Kyle Larson, right? That's what you're thinking. I'm pretty confident in thinking you think, and then
you might be on the right path
because you think I'm going to take Martin Truex Jr., right? That would be the most logical way to go about this and say that he wins once again here at Darlington and goes basically 2 for 2 this season. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Martin Truex Jr. here. I can't leave you him. You're going to probably take, you're going to take Kyle Larson most likely. And that really scares me. And it's just so close between the two of them. But I'm just going to give the edge to the 19 car on their 750 speed, their ability to execute here, and his previous results here at Darlington could have, should have, would have maybe won the race last season. Chase Elliott was right there at the end, was probably faster than him, maybe, but Truex was going for the pass there at the end. So it's really, really close between the two of them. But I'm going to lean Martin Truex Jr. here, play the numbers game, go with Chevrolet as the more manufacturer odds, but then stick with my Joe Gibbs Racing and say that they win as an organization and then go with him as the winner with Martin Truex Jr.
Well, if Truex wins, then you only get 5 points out of it because I have the Toyota manufacturer. So I'm at least content with it because I did want Martin Truex Jr. as the winner pick for this one. But I will happily take Kyle Larson as a runner up for this one. I was looking at Kevin Harvick last year.
You only gain, you'd only gain 5 points, right?
One. What's that?
You'd only gain 5 points on this one as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, because you've got Chevy there.
It's so close between us this weekend. It's going to come down to like single digit numbers probably.
Which is why I like the idea of not being able to pick the same driver. But anyways, for Kyle Larson here, he's the clear number 2 option. He's got the best average points haul of drivers in the Cup Series over the last 6 races. Granted, 3 of those he wasn't participating in. But when he goes to Darlington, he's consistently at the front. He did it with Chip Ganassi Racing. There's no reason to believe that he won't be able to do it again with Hendrick Motorsports and do so with more reliability and not have to push the car as much. Top 5 median lap time speed with the 750 package. I think that he's going to have a lot of competition from the rest of those Joe Gibbs guys. I really thought about going Denny Hamlin for this one, but just the fact that he hasn't won the season just can't quite put him there. But I'll go Kyle Larson for this one, and I think we'll get a nice battle going on Sunday night in a nice little kind of throwback race. Even though we don't have the schemes, it'll be nice to watch guys actually have to wheel the cars with a lot of horsepower on the track that doesn't want you to do so.
No, this is one of my favorite races of the season, despite it being a bit long and it drags on. This is a driver's racetrack. That's a beautiful
thing, though. Like it's one thing if a race drags on and it's the 550 package and there's no passing and it's slow and blah, blah, blah. It's a whole different thing to me when you can appreciate and you're a race fan that appreciates the talent that it takes to drive these cars, and you can see the onboards and you can see through the windshield of the guys trying to hold on to the car and trying to modulate the throttle and all those kind of things. That's the kind of racing that I think a lot of people that have been long-term fans and are hardcore fans really enjoy. And I'm glad that they'll get that opportunity to watch that this weekend for 500 miles at Darlington.
Tire fall off going to be a massive thing as always here this weekend.
It'll be 2 seconds plus. That's going to be a big part of strategy.
Yeah, and green flag pit stops are always treacherous here at Darlington. It's probably one of, if not the most difficult to get on and off a pit road, just given the banking difference and how you want to approach it. But it comes down to green flag pit stops a lot of times here on the strategy in that final stage on how many times do you want to pit, 3 or 2 times. It's just a lot of different ways to go about it with strategy. How much will that new turn 2 repavement impact the overall racing product here this weekend? I'm fascinated to see what happens with this race this weekend, and it's going to be one heck of a playoff opener. I'm really happy that it is the playoff opener. Chicagoland was great. It was a fantastic 1.5 mile race if you're going to open up a playoffs, but Darlington has a lot more historic value, and it's a great track to really get the playoffs underway. It feels like a special event here, no matter what it is, if we're running special paint schemes or not. So at least we get a couple. We get a couple. But any final thoughts before we wrap up our fantasy preview here today, Kyle?
Yeah, just a fun weekend coming up. Darlington is such a great track. It was cool to see them get 2 dates back. I think we could see them go back to 1 date next season and kind of have the throwback weekend all together at the beginning of the playoffs. I wouldn't hate that as a scenario if it means adding a couple new racetracks, specifically new ovals to the circuit. But for this season, having 2 Darlington races, one during the day, one during the night, is going to be really fun to see. Wish we had more throwback schemes, but it is going to be nice to see some of those typical schemes we get to see under the lights, and under the lights for quite a few weeks as well. Daytona under the lights last time out as well. This entire first round and the first race of the second round as well, all under the lights. This kind of little night stretch that we get here to start the playoffs should be a lot of fun.
Pretty insane stretch here. This is probably one of
I don't hate having the day to actually do stuff and then get to watch the race at night.
This is probably one of my favorite stretches of the whole season here. It goes from the Daytona regular season finale to the Darlington race. Richmond's been kind of, but then Bristol cannot wait for Bristol,
which we didn't actually get this year.
So. We are getting a full Bristol race. I don't care what you say. Yeah. This Bristol track is the best track on the Cup Series calendar by far, by none. I'm sorry.
Ooh, by far.
Yeah. For me, it's just unbelievably fantastic. And then
you go to your guy wins there a lot.
Hey, I just, even if he didn't, it doesn't hurt. Yeah. But then you got Vegas, and then you go into the stressfulness of that round of 12. Lots of action coming up over the next couple of weeks here, and we will have you covered here at the Green Flag. And speaking at the Green Flag, make sure to follow us on Instagram at the Green Flag Pod, as well as Twitter at the Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. We'd really, really appreciate it. We'll leave a link to the NASCAR on TSN page there this weekend as well. Going to be covering that for myself on that page. Going to be doing some graphics and stuff like that, trying to spice that up. So make sure you go check that page out and give it a follow. And we're going to have an exciting race this weekend at Darlington. But for this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman, signing off for now. We will talk to you next week to get you set up for Richmond. Enjoy Darlington. Enjoy the playoffs, everybody.